In the ancient kingdom of Benin, tucked in the heart of Nigeria, there was a young girl named Osas. As an orphan girl, Osas was sent to live with her mother's elder sister, Aunty Isoken. But life in her auntie's home was far from the comforting refuge Osas had hoped for. Aunty Isoken was a woman of stone, hardened by years of unpleasantness and jealousy. She treated Osas not as her own flesh, but more like a maid. Every day, Osas would rise with the sun, her stomach growling with hunger and her heart heavy with despair. Aunty Soke gave her only the leftovers of her own family's meals, scraps of yam, a few pieces of fish bones, and stale bread. On days when there was nothing left over, Osas had no choice but to go out begging in the village streets, hoping to find a kind soul who might spare her a morsel to eat. But it wasn't just the hunger that tormented Osas. It was the endless chores and the unreasonable errands Auntie Soken sent her on. Day or night, rain or shine, Osas was made to go to the stream to fetch water, to the forest to gather firewood, or to the market to buy foodstuff. And these errands were not simple. Auntie Soken always sent Osas out at the most ungodly hours, late at night, when the moon was hidden behind dark clouds, or early in the morning when the mist still clung to the trees like ghosts. The villagers often warned Auntie Isoken against sending Osas out at such hours, speaking of spirits and creatures that roam the night. But Auntie Isoken would only laugh. "She's not my child though," she would say, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Let the spirit have her if they wish." Little did Auntie Isoken know, Osas was never alone on her midnight journeys. Unknown to anyone, Osas had pleasant guardian angels in human form who watched over her, whispering in her ears in the wind, guiding her steps and keeping her safe from harm. On many occasions, Osas could feel their presence, warm and comforting, like a gentle hand on her shoulder, a soft voice in her ear telling her which path to take and which shadows to avoid. One night, when the moon hung high in the sky, shrouded by thick clouds, Auntie Soken sent Osas to the market. "Go and get some yams and beans," she commanded, her eyes dark with malice. "And be quick about it, or there will be no food for you tomorrow." Osas nodded, clutching the small purse of cowries that Auntie Soken had tossed at her feet. She wrapped her thin shawl around her shoulders and stepped out into the chilly night. The path to the market was long and winding, and the darkness seemed thicker than usual. But Osas was not afraid. She had grown used to the night, to the sounds of the forest, to the whispers of the unseen guardians. As she walked, Osas hummed a tune her mother used to sing. It was a lullaby, soft and soothing, and it brought back memories of happier times. She closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth of her mother's embrace, the gentle. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Gentle touch of her hand. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. There was no use crying. Her mother was gone, and she had to be strong. After what felt like hours, Osas finally reached the market. It was a strange sight, dimly lit by flickering lanterns, with stalls covered in shadows. The usual hustle and bustle of the day was replaced by silence, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the distant barking of a dog. Osas walked carefully, her eyes darting around, looking for the yam and beans Auntie Soken had asked her for. As she moved through the market, she saw a little girl sitting alone by a stall. The girl looked no older than 7 or 8 years, with bright eyes and a warm smile. She waved at Osas, beckoning her to come closer. Curious and feeling an inexplicable pull towards the child, Osas walked over. "Call," meaning hello, the little girl said, her voice sweet and melodic. "Would you like to play with me?" Osas hesitated. She had never had a playmate, never had a friend to share her sorrows with. But there was something about this girl, something kind and familiar, that made Osas nod. They played together, laughing and chasing each other around the market stalls. For the first time in what seemed like forever, Osas felt a spark of happiness. She forgot about Auntie Soke, forgot about her hunger, forgot about the cruel world she lived in. She was just a little girl, playing in the moonlight with her new friend. After some time, the little girl stopped and looked at Osas with a gentle smile. It's time to go, she said softly. Osas nodded, feeling a pang of sadness at the thought of leaving her new friend. Will I see you again? Osas asked. The little girl smiled, her eyes twinkling with a mysterious light. Perhaps, she replied. Then, as if by magic, the little girl began to change. Her form shimmered, and before Osas could blink, the little girl transformed into a woman. Osas in shock, her heart pounding in her chest. It was her mother standing before her, smiling down at her with love and warmth. Iye! Meaning mother. Osas cried, tears streaming down her face. She reached out to touch her, to feel her warmth again. Her mother knelt down and pulled Osas into a tight embrace. My dear Osas, she whispered, her voice like a soothing balm to Osas's soul. I have always been with you. I always will be. She handed Osas a small basket, beautifully woven with golden threads and filled with fruits, coins, and jewelries. Take this, my child. It is a gift for your kindness, for your courage and your enduring spirit. Use it wisely. It will bring you great fortune. Osas nodded, clutching the basket tightly. She wanted to stay with her mother, to feel her warmth and love, but she knew she had to go back. Her mother gently please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Stroked her cheeks and whispered, Go, my child, and remember, I'm always with you. With a heavy heart, Osas turned and began her return back home. She had bought the yams and beans, with the basket held securely in her arms. The night seemed brighter now, the path clearer, and she felt a strength within her that she had never felt before. When she got home, Aunty Isoken was waiting, her eyes narrow with suspicion. She spotted the basket in Osas's hands, and her eyes widened with greed. What is that? She demanded, reaching out to grab it. But the moment her hand touched the basket, something incredible happened. Aunty Isoken's hand began to wither and shrink like a dried leaf. She screamed in pain, pulling her hand back, but the damage was done. Her one strong arm hung limp and useless by her side. Osas watched in shock, clutching the basket closer to her chest. She did not understand what had just happened, but she felt a strange sense of justice in her heart. Angry Aunty Isoken, terrified, glared at Osas. You wicked child, she spat. You've bewitched me, but I'll show you. I'll get my own basket of fortunes. That very night, Aunty Isoken called her daughter, Esohe, a girl just a few years older than Osas, and told her to go to the market. Go to the same place Osas went, she ordered, her eyes glinting with greed. And do not return until you have a basket of fortunes for me. Esohe, scared and unsure, nodded and set off into the night. She followed the path Osas had taken, her heart pounding with fear and anticipation. But unlike Osas, Esohe had no guardian angels to protect her. She had no one to guide her steps, no one to whisper in her ears. The night seemed darker, the shadows deeper. When she got to the market, she saw the same little girl sitting by the store, smiling at her with that same mysterious smile. Would you like to play with me? The girl asked. But Esohe was not like Osas. She had no kindness in her heart, no innocence in her soul. She sneered at the little girl and said, I have no time for your games. Give me the basket of fortunes. The little girl's smile faded. Then she looked at Esohe with a sadness that seemed to pierce the very air. Very well, she said softly. She handed Esohe a basket much like the one she had given to Osas. Esohe snatched it greedily and turned to leave, a smirk on her face. But as she walked away, she heard the little girl's voice, soft and mournful. Beware, Esohe. The basket holds what you deserve. Ignoring the warning, Esohe hurried back home, eager to show her mother the basket. Aunty Isohe was waiting, her eyes filled with a burning greed. Give it to me, she cried, snatching the basket from her daughter's hands. But the moment she opened it, a foul smell filled the air. From the basket, a dark mist poured out, swirling around Aunty Isoke and Esohe. They both screamed, dropping the basket, but it was too late. Esohe clutched her face, crying out in horror. She was going blind, her vision fading to darkness. Auntie Sohe fell to the ground, her legs giving way beneath her. Sores erupted all over her body, painful and oozing, filling the room with a sickening stench. Osas watched from a distance, her heart heavy with a mixture of fear and a strange satisfaction. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew that justice had finally been served. The night market had given them exactly what they deserved. As the dark mist enveloped Aunty Isoken and Esohe, Osas stood frozen, clutching the basket tightly against her chest. She watched in stunned silence as her auntie's cries of pain filled the small house. Esohe clawed at her eyes, her screams piercing the night. While Aunty Isoken coiled on the ground, her body contorted in agony. The mist swirled around them, thick and suffocating, like a living shadow. Osas felt a pang of guilt mixed with a strange sense of justice. She did not wish this fate upon them, but she couldn't ignore the relief that settled in her heart. A life of suffering and neglect had hardened her spirit, but it had not broken it. She whispered a silent prayer for her aunt and cousin, hoping they would find peace, even if only in their suffering. Suddenly, the mist began to dissipate, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. The room went scaringly quiet, except for the heavy breathing of Aunty Soke and Esohe. The one strong woman now lay helpless on the floor, her body covered in sores that oozed with a foul-smelling liquid. Her legs were twisted and useless, and her once beautiful face was now marred with pain and desperation. Esohe, meanwhile, lay curled in a corner, her eyes wide open but sightless, staring blankly into the void. Osas knew she had to leave. The house that was once her prison no longer felt like home. With the basket still in her hands, she turned and stepped aside, feeling the cool night on her face. The moon was full now, its silver light casting long shadows on the ground. She left. She took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. She did not know where she would go or what she would do, but she knew she couldn't stay there any longer. As she walked away from the house, the basket in her hands began to glow softly. She glanced down, curious, and saw that the fruits and the coins inside were shining with a gentle golden light. She remembered her mother's words: "Use it wisely, and it will bring you fortune." Osas continued down the path, her mind racing with thoughts of what to do next. The road ahead seemed endless, stretching out into the darkness, but she felt a new strength within her, a determination she had never felt before. She thought about her mother and the kindness she had shown her, even in death, and she knew she had to honor that kindness in her own life. As she walked, she began to hear a faint melody in the wind, a soft, soothing tune that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was the same lullaby her mother used to sing to her, and it filled her heart with a warm, comforting feeling. She followed the sound, letting it guide her through the darkness. After some time, she found herself standing before an old tree. The tree was ancient, its trunk thick and twisted, its branches reaching up towards the sky like skeletal fingers. At the base of the tree sat an old woman. Her hair was white as snow, her eyes closed as she hummed the familiar tune. Osas approached the woman carefully, her heart pounding in her chest. The woman opened her eyes and smiled, a warm, knowing smile that made Osas feel safe. "You have come far, my child," the woman said, her voice soft and gentle, "and you have a long journey ahead of you." Osas nodded, feeling tears prick at the corner of her eyes. "I don't know where to go, Iye," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The old woman reached out and placed a wrinkled hand on Osas's face. "The path will reveal itself in time," she said kindly. "But first, you must learn the true value of the gift you carry." She pointed to the basket in Osas's hand. "This basket is more than just a gift of fortune," she continued. "It is a test of your heart and spirit. You must decide how you will use it and for whom." Osas looked down at the basket, the golden light still shining brightly. She thought of all the things she could do with the wealth it contained. She could buy food, clothes, and a warm bed. She could live comfortably for the rest of her life. But then she thought of the other children in the village, the ones who were just as hungry and cold as she had been. She thought of the kind old man who had given her bread when she was begging on the streets, the woman who had smiled at her even when others turned away. She looked back at the old woman, determination in her eyes. I want to help Iye. I want to help others, she said firmly. I want to use this gift to make a difference. The old woman smiled, a proud gleam in her eyes. A wise choice, child, she said. But remember, true wealth is not measured by what you have, but by what you give. Use your gift wisely, and it will multiply. Osas nodded understandingly. She thanked the old woman and turned to leave, but the woman's voice stopped her. Before you go, the old woman said, her tone more serious, beware of those who will seek to take your gift for themselves. Not everyone is as kind hearted as you, and there are many who will use the basket's power for evil. Osas felt a shiver run down her spine, but she nodded. I will be careful, Iye, she promised. With that, she set off once more, her heart filled with a renewed sense of purpose. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and dangers, but she was ready. She was no longer the frightened, helpless girl she once was. She is Osas, and she has a destiny to fulfill. As she walked, the sky began to lighten, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. She felt a surge of hope, a feeling that perhaps, just perhaps, things will get better. She looked down at the basket in her hands, the golden light still glowing softly, and she smiled. In one village, she met a kind baker named Osaze, a portly man with a thick beard and a perpetual smile. He noticed Osas watching him as he baked bread in his small shop and called her over. Good morning, my dear, Osaze said, wiping his flour covered hands on his apron. You look like you've been traveling for a while. Would you like a fresh loaf of bread? Osas's stomach rumbled at the sight of the warm, crusty bread. She nodded gratefully. Yes, Epa. Thank you very much, sir. Osaze chuckled and handed her a loaf of bread, still warm from the oven. No need to thank me, child, he said kindly. I can see you have a good heart. It's a pleasure to help you. Osa smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the bread. She reached into her basket and pulled out a small gold coin, offering it to Osaze. Here, Epa, please take this as payment. But Osaze shook his head and pushed her hand away. No, 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 he said with a wave of hand. I don't need your money, child. Just promise me one thing. When you see someone in need, help them as I've helped you today. Osas nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. I promise, Epa, I promise, she said earnestly. She tore a piece of the bread and savored its warmth and softness. The people in Osaze city were friendly, and Osas decided to stay there for a few days. She helped Osaze in his bakery, kneading dough and learning to bake. In exchange, he taught her the secret of his craft, sharing stories and laughter as they walked side by side. She was happy for the first time in a long while, finding joy in the simple act of giving and receiving kindness. But as days passed, rumors of her miraculous basket began to spread. Whispers of a girl with a magic basket that could grant fortunes reached the ears of a wealthy merchant named Idahosa in a neighboring city. Idahosa was a man known for his greed, and he was cunning too. He had built his wealth by exploiting others, taking advantage of the poor and vulnerable. When he heard of Osas and her basket, his eyes gleamed with ambition. This girl must be a fool, oh, Idahosa mused to himself. Walking around with such treasure, it should belong in the hands of someone who knows its true worth. Someone like me. Determined to claim the basket for himself, Idahosa devised a plan. He sent word to Osas. inviting her to his home for a feast. He disguised his intentions with sweet words, pretending to be a benefactor interested in her welfare. Osas, unaware of Idahosa's true nature, accepted the invitation. She arrived at his grand house, a sprawling estate surrounded by high walls and guarded by fierce-looking men. The house was filled with riches, fine silk curtains, golden candlesticks, and carpet so plush they swallowed her feet with each step. She felt a twinge of unease, but decided to push it aside, hoping for the best. Idahosa greeted her with a wide smile, his eyes glinting with barely concealed greed. Welcome, welcome, my dear Osas, he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. I have heard so much about you and your kindness. Please, come and eat. You must be hungry after such a long journey. The table was laden with all sorts of delicious food, roasted meat, ripe fruit, steaming pots of stew. Osas's mouth watered, but she remained calm, reminding herself to be cautious. As she sat down, Idahosa watched her every move, his gaze fixed on the basket at her side. So, my dear, he began, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. I've heard about your wonderful basket. Tell me, what treasures does it hold? Osas hesitated, remembering the old woman's warning. It is a gift, she said carefully, a reminder of my mother's love and a tool to help those in need. Dahosa's smile tightened, his patience wearing thin. Ah, but surely you must know its true value, he pressed. A basket that grants fortunes? Imagine what it could do in the right hands. You are just a young girl. You cannot possibly understand its potential. Osas's eyes narrowed. She could feel the weight of his greed pressing down on her, suffocating her like a dark cloud. She stood up, clutching the basket protectively. I think I've had enough of your hospitality, she said firmly. Thank you for your meal, but I must go now. But before she could take a step, Idahosa signaled to his guards, Stop her! He backed, his voice losing all pretense of friendliness. The guards moved quickly, blocking Osas's path. She felt a surge of panic, but forced herself to stay calm. She remembered her mother's words and remembered the old woman's warning. She had to be strong. I don't want any trouble, Osas said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Let me go, and no harm will come to you. Idahosa laughed, a cruel mocking sound. You think you can threaten me, little girl? He sneered. Give me the basket, and I might let you leave unharmed. Osas glanced around, searching for a way out. The room was large, the windows were too high, and the guards too strong for her to overpower. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the familiar warmth of her guardian angels surrounding her. She whispered a silent prayer, asking for guidance. Suddenly, the basket in her hands began to glow again, brighter than ever before. An intense golden light filled the room, blinding the guards and Idahosa. They cried out in surprise, shielding their eyes from the intense glow. Taking advantage of their distraction, Osas dashed forward, ducking under the arms of the nearest guard. She ran as fast as she could, her heart pounding in her chest. Behind her, she could hear Idahosa's furious shouts, but she did not look back. She knew she had to keep moving. She had to get away. She ran through the winding streets of the village. The basket. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Its light guiding her way. She could feel her mother's presence, her spirit urging her on, whispering words of encouragement in her ears. She did not stop until she was far beyond the village, her heart pounding in her chest. She collapsed under a large tree, panting heavily. She could still hear Idahosa's shouts in the distance, but they were growing fainter. She knew she had escaped, but also knew she could not stay in one place for too long. Idahosa will not give up easily. He will be back, and she had to be ready. As she rested, she felt a sudden movement from within the basket. She opened it, curious, and saw a small glowing crystal ball nestled among the fruits and coins. The crystal ball pulsed with a soft calming light, and Osas felt a wave of peace wash over her. She reached out to touch it, and as her fingers brushed against its smooth surface, a voice filled her mind. Do not fear, child, the voice said, warm and comforting. You are not alone. You have been chosen to carry this gift, to use it wisely. But beware, many will seek to take it from you. Trust in your heart, and you will find your way. Osas nodded, her resolve strengthening. She closed the basket and stood up, feeling a renewed strength of purpose. She will continue her journey, continue helping those in need, and she will not let anyone take her gift away. After several hours of walking, Osas met a group of men in a city. In the center of the city stood a tall, slender tree, its branches reaching up to the sky. At its base, a single flower bloomed, a delicate silver blossom that seemed to shimmer in the faint light. Osas knew at once that it was the flower called Tears of the Moon. There it is, one of the men said softly, his voice barely a whisper. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Go and pick it, and we shall be on our way. Osas stepped forward, her heart pounding with excitement. But as she reached out to touch the flower, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. She hesitated, sensing something was wrong. She turned to look at the man, and for the first time, she noticed a dark shadow lurking in his eyes, a hidden malice that had been carefully concealed. What's the matter? He asked, his voice suddenly sharp. Osas took a step backwards, clutching the basket tighter. Who are you? She demanded, her voice trembling. Why are you helping me? The man's smile twisted into a sneer. Ah, clever girl, he hissed. I'm Osawe, the servant of Agboma, the great goddess of the forest, and I have no intention of helping you. I only want the basket. Before Osas could react, Osawe jumped at her, his hands reaching for the basket. Osas cried out, stumbling backwards. She felt the ground give way beneath her feet, and she fell, stumbling down a steep hill, the basket slipping from her hands. She landed hard, the wind knocked out of her. She scrambled to her feet, her eyes searching frantically for the basket. She saw it lying a few feet away, just out of reach. But before she could move, Osawe was upon her again, his eyes blazing with anger. Give it to me, he snarled, grabbing her arm. Give me the basket, or I will take it by force. Osas struggled, her mind racing. She could feel the presence of her guardian angels, their strength flowing through her. She knew she had to act quickly. With all her might, she kicked Osawe, knocking him off balance. She launched for the basket, grabbing it just as Osawe regained his footing. But before he could attack her again, a blinding light erupted from the basket, filling the path with a brilliant golden glow. Osawe cried out, covering his eyes, and staggered back. Fear etched on his face. The light grew brighter, pulsing with a powerful energy. Osas felt a surge of strength, a warmth that filled her entire being. She knew her mother's spirit was with her, guiding her. Please subscribe to this channel, like, share, and comment. Her protecting her. With a determined shout, Osas raised the basket high. Leave now, Osawe, she commanded, her voice strong and unwavering. This is not your fight. Go back to your mistress and tell her she will never have this gift. Osawe hesitated, his face twisted with rage and frustration. But the light was too strong, too pure. He knew he could not win. With a snarl, he turned and fled into the shadows, disappearing into the darkness. Osas watched him go, her heart still racing. She held the basket close, feeling its comforting warmth. As she walked, the sun began to rise. The path ahead was long, but Osas was not afraid. She was ready to face whatever lay ahead, ready to continue the journey of kindness, bravery, and love. And so, with the light of the morning sun down upon her, Osas continued on her way, her spirit unbroken, her heart full, her basket of fortunes glowing brightly at her side, a beacon of hope for an orphan girl who so desperately needed it.